Hello, my name is John Sviokla. I'm Director of the Diamond Exchange and Chief Innovation Officer. The purpose of our Diamond Exchange is to entertain the most important questions of business with the best conversation partners in a relaxing environment so you have time to think and really consider the implications of some of these important questions for your business now and in the future. This particular Diamond Exchange, we worried about the question of how do you harness the power of all the data that's coming out in the world today. If you think about it, you have everything from information from satellites down to what's happening in your car to when you log onto Facebook and a social network. All this data is giving us more capability to measure what's going on with our customers, with our people, with the assets in our businesses. But most businesses are having a hard time dealing with all this information, and they feel more overwhelmed by it than they do empowered by it. So in this particular Diamond Exchange, what we did is we put together a model we call our layer model, where we thought about information, and we invite you to think about information as having different layers. And if you can think of what those layers are, it can help you organize the information in a way that makes it productive for your firm. As we think about the layer concept, there are 5 different levels that we're going to consider. First, the individual level. What happens to the information that comes from you and around you? Second, at the organizational level, what happens with information within your firm and how can it be more or less competitive because of it? Third, the market. Think about the information that flows in and around a market. Fourth, at the national level, right now we are transforming how we produce and consume information at the national level. And last, the issue of how does information flow between countries and what does it mean for productivity and future value. So at the individual level, Larry Smarr is going to talk about how we as people are starting to generate much more information as we think about the care of our own health.
We talk a lot about how data is transforming various industries. In fact, that's a lot of what the Diamond Exchange is about. But one of the biggest industries that's yet to be transformed is the healthcare industry. And the healthcare industry, interestingly enough, is about each of us and our own bodies. And we don't think of our bodies as something that generate data, but we're very complex, interactive, biochemical, mechanical systems, each of us. And the amazing thing is that the development of sensors and laboratory instruments has been exponential, just like your computers, over the last decade, to the point now that it's becoming cheap enough that we can actually monitor and generate data streams about a whole bunch of things that are critical to the well-being of our bodies.
As an example of the organizational layer of information, Roger Peterson is going to talk about how Aura Pharma used information to find new customers and compete better in the marketplace.
So I think one thing that we're evolving to is as an organization that is taking the data and truly trying to understand really where do you want to deploy your efforts. A perfect example is we ran a pilot within 6 markets across the country. And one of the markets we ran the pilot in was Indianapolis. And so we got to the kind of the outwards of Indianapolis, and we got to this small town, got up on a gravel road, and I saw this office up on the hill, and it was just this kind of metal-looking building. So we went to the office and we asked the questions, the profiling questions, and the account manager, after about 10 minutes into this call, she realized that there is some tremendous potential in this office.
At the market layer, we're going to have Chris Edmonds of ICE Trust talk about an incredible facility they've created for clearing credit default swaps. In addition, Mike Moscow, the ex-president of the Chicago Fed, is going to talk about information at the market layer.
Having the proper systems in place, whether that's a combination of hardware, software, making sure they're reliable and in a manner that we can extract the information we need in real time or near real time is paramount to our business. As a clearinghouse, we are an independent arbitration mechanism, if you will, for risk. Prior to clearinghouses taking on products such as OTC derivatives, which CDS is one of, there was really no way to independently verify what is the value of one product over another. Without our data, without the data captured, without the data stored appropriately, and without our models functioning at the appropriate pace, we have no chance to having the clarity or providing the clarity that our customers expect.
In every expansion, there are always opportunities, and you have to look for them. So what are the industries that will be growing faster? Certainly healthcare, with the enormous investment we're putting into healthcare, will be growing quickly. I think elementary and secondary education will be an area of more rapid growth. I think certainly in the high-tech area, companies are always looking for ways to cut costs. And if they can find ways to utilize technology, equipment, software to reduce costs, they will invest in those areas. And in fact, over the last 2 quarters, we have seen a significant increase in equipment and software spending in the overall economy.
At the country layer, my partner Eric Garr is going to speak to the national broadband strategy that he helped craft with the Federal Communications Commission this past year.
The basic premises of the plan, which does many things, it repurposes about $16 billion of public funding to focus more on broadband infrastructure for our schools, our hospitals, and our public safety institutions. It also frees up about 500 megahertz of spectrum so that we have world-leading wireless broadband. One other item I'd like to highlight on the innovation and investment section of the plan is the importance of spectrum policy to really drive innovation in our economy. What that means is any company who wants to invent a wireless product can use that spectrum free of charge. They certainly have to obey some basic rules about how to use it. But by making that available as a public good, that's a very appropriate and important government role in innovation, because it allows all sorts of great American companies to invent new products on the kind of the backbone of that spectrum.
Cesar Hidalgo, a professor at MIT and Harvard, is going to now speak to the inter-country layer of information and what it means for complexity, capability, and productivity of countries over time.
You can understand the world in its complexity and with all its moving parts, and there's very different predictions about how the world economy is going to evolve when you take all these different considerations. For instance, when you consider that the world is complex, that it's made of lots of little moving parts instead of capital and labor, you're going to find that actually the rate of return for any investment is going to be very dependent on the number of capabilities that you already have accumulated. Poor countries are not going to have any return for the accumulation of capabilities because complements are not there. Rich countries have huge returns because once a new capability comes along, other things are around, and this capability can combine with others to create a product and produce value. So by taking complexity and putting at the center of the economic discourse, we understand the world in a different way, and we can solve some development puzzles that we were not able to understand previously.
Now that we've explored each of the layers with some of our speakers, the issue becomes, how do you manage that information? Professor Dan Ariely of Duke is going to speak to experimentation as a critical part of managing that information. And then Larry Smarr, the director of the Cal IT2 Lab, is going to talk about why information can help make us more productive, why it's cheaper to do it today, and why it's more powerful than it ever has been before.
The angle that I and Diamond have been advocating information from my angle is experimental information. It's the idea that you can look at what you're doing right now and you might find some variations and might find ways to improve it. But if you start doubting your intuition and you start doubting things in a more substantial way, maybe you want to do some experiments. Maybe you want to put one condition this way, one condition that way, one treatment of this sort, another condition of that sort, and that's the information we're looking for. How people actually react when you face them in two different types of reality. Which one of those will get people to make better decisions, faster decisions, higher loyalty, whatever it is. So the information that I'm trying to kind of promote is experimental information. See when you don't understand something, kind of try to figure out what are the situations in which you just think you understand how the world works, but you don't have data about it, and then design some experiments to kind of find out and understand what you really know and don't. Doubt your intuitions. The fact is that when we look at the world around us, we often don't understand how things exactly work, kind of blinded to reality in some important way. And I want to promote in people kind of a bit more slow, reflective approach, but also a more experimental approach that says, the truth is we've never tried all of those approaches. Let's try something and see what comes out of it.
I'm an eternal optimist because I believe in the exponentials. If you look at where so much of our prosperity has come from over the last 10 or 15 years, it's because of the continued exponentials in computers. Now, what does that mean? What it means is every year we can compute more and store more data for less money. And so that means as years go by, I can ask more and more complicated questions. I can have more complicated algorithms to take my customer data, my supplier data, and I can get a more economical outcome for my company.
You just heard from our Diamond Exchange speakers on the topic of harnessing the power of data and what it means for you as an individual, for your firms, and for the world at large. I hope that their perspective has helped inspire you so that you're not overwhelmed by all this data, but you can actually put it to good use today, tomorrow, and in the future.